Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending a VoIP Supply and Algo webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about the ease of remote management with Algo devices. I'll be joined today by Scott Farrell of Algo. Scott and I have worked many deals with Algo devices, and VoIP Supply has really been impressed not only just by the sold devices, but by Algo as a company as well. The engineering that goes into the devices, to the white glove service and support that they truly give and stand out from other companies. So during this webinar, we really appreciate you attending, especially during these times, to take a half hour, 45 minutes out of your day to join us. It really means a lot to us. So we want to make sure you are heard. There is a question bubble in the lower right hand corner. If you want to hit that and ask away today, Scott and I will absolutely make sure that everything is addressed for you. And if you're not familiar with VoIP Supply, welcome. For those of you who are, sorry to be a little bit redundant here, but since 2002, VoIP Supply has been cranking in the VoIP industry. We have over 125,000 customers, and there's a lot of benefits to being a reseller and being on board with VoIP Supply. We do have a rental program, so you can do DAS or device as a service and lower some capital expenses for your customers. Helps our partners get a lot more larger deals as well, where the companies are used to a monthly bill as opposed to doling out that capital for their system all up front. Hardware and provisioning. So with over 60 manufacturers like Algo, we can actually provision your Algo device to your PBX or VoIP service and ship it out plug and play. We can do so privately labeled or branded and blind shipped as well, and get you your MAC ID so you can program it on your end. Along with offering hardware, of course, comes service. VoIP Supply is a master agent for many of the major players in our industry. So please get with me after this and shoot me an email or give me a call, and I can let you know on how you can start gaining some of that MRR at a really good rate as well if you're not already doing so. Refreshing reclaim lastly, if you're in a situation where you go on site and a customer has some old crusty Polycom phones or Cisco phones, it's possible that we can get you some capital or some store credit for those phones with our reclaim program. On the flip of that, VoIP Supply does offer industry leading refurbished, we call them refreshed, as that refurbished term has certainly been bastardized. We've seen most of those end up looking just like used phones, but they go through a 10-step process here at VoIP Supply. The phones do look as close to new as possible, loaded with the latest firmware, and of course can be provisioned and blind shipped to your conditions. Yeah, with that, I will pass the torch to you, Scott, my compadre, and here with Algo. Again, everyone, please ask questions in the question bubble, and we really appreciate you joining today. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, well, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you setting this up. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Scott Farrell, and I represent Algo in the North American market from a strategic accounts perspective. I'm not going to do a full portfolio overview. I've done that recently. So what we're going to focus on today is just the ease of remote management with Algo devices. I will give you a high-level overview of the company and our portfolio of products for those of you that may not be aware of the product portfolio. In today's environment, it is important to be able to manage devices over the network, and we'll take you through that. So I have some slides. We have some new products that are going to be coming out later this year that I think are quite interesting, so I'm going to touch on those. And then at the end, what I can do is I'll actually log into some of the devices and give you a real-time view of what we're capable of doing. So the agenda today will be a solution overview. We'll talk about the Algo control panel. We're going to talk about device monitoring, and then again, as I mentioned, the product updates. So I'm going to just take you through a high-level solution overview. The reason I have the monitor and manage circled over on the right is that's kind of what the theme is today, is monitoring and managing. But Algo Communication Products is a manufacturer of SIP IP products, and we build products that address paging, alerting visually and audibly. We build intercom devices for secure door access. We build paging adapters that can be used to interface into legacy infrastructure. So if you have an existing 70-volt system, we can tie into that system. And what's nice about the portfolio is basically we don't care if it's a hosted or premise-based solution, as long as it's a network IP-based solution that accepts a third-party SIP endpoint, we can register into that infrastructure. So you can manipulate our endpoints with SIP registrations. We have inputs and outputs for button connections into our devices. We support multicast, so we can scale. So not everything needs to be SIP registered. It's not like you have to go and get a bunch of SIP licenses for all of the devices you deploy. But basically, you're typically going to have a device on your network, which we would call what we call a multicast master. I'm finding that in a lot of environments today, and part of the reason we're going through this presentation is IP paging is becoming so popular that I work with sites that have several hundred endpoints. So having a single pane view is nice. And basically, what we're capable of doing is deploying a product, for instance, like the Bell scheduling and music device, the paging adapter, and that becomes what we call the multicast master. So it would typically get SIP registered into your environment, and then it's going to send out multicast messages to all the other devices. Of course, intercoms would be SIP registered as well. But that's a brief high-level overview of the portfolio and how it functions. So we're seeing a lot of influence in the industry. There's a lot of change out there, and of course, I've got the network configurable and easily changed highlighted because that is the focus of today's discussion. But critical safety and security is paramount now, and we're seeing a lot of organizations, whether it be K-12, just large business, being able to effectively communicate with their constituents and just be able to get emergency notification messages out there, whether it be a weather event, a lockdown event, or a shelter-in-place event. All of the Algo endpoints have the wideband G722 codec loaded to them, so for clear, intelligible communications, there's definitely a differentiator when you're using wideband, and that's embedded in all of the devices. A lot of organizations are going to common infrastructure, so they're not wanting to. IT departments don't want to, manage multiple plant facilities. So a lot of them are, going to standard network topology. A lot of the operational technology that's coming into the business today, whether it be an IP speaker or a camera, IP cameras, HVAC systems, all kinds of control systems are now IP enabled. So a lot of companies are going that way, and we're seeing companies, migrate away from legacy infrastructure and tying into our adapters and allowing them to do kind of a phased approach, but their end game is to be all IP. And then the whole new SIP UC environments that are all over the marketplace now are basically IP. They're the standard. The standard going forward is basically SIP IP-based systems. Our devices, as you'll see today, are basically network devices, and they have a web interface for interaction. So having a device on the network that you can manage remotely, it just simplifies implementation and ongoing management and monitoring. So that's huge. And right now there are a lot of people working from home, and if you have legacy infrastructure in place, changing a volume setting on a speaker in a warehouse, or if something went out of service, you may have to dispatch somebody there in the legacy world, whereas there's a lot of interesting troubleshooting that we can do remotely, and we'll touch on that today. So this is a shot of the control panel, and this is what you're going to see on any Algo device that you would basically come and hit on the network. So one of the advantages that we have with our portfolio of product, and it's very popular with a lot of customers that have a secure posture on their networks, is the fact that we don't have any common equipment installed in that environment other than the endpoints. So think of these as smart IP phones. They're basically running an operating system, a Linux OS. They have a SIP stack on them. They're capable of multicast, and they have a bunch of embedded features. So there's no common equipment. Speakers are self-amplified, so there is no amplifier. From a software perspective, the software is embedded in the endpoint. So again, you do not have to install any software in your customer's network, which is very important to many organizations. So when you hit one of our devices by putting in the IP address, so what I've got showing here is an Algo 8301 paging adapter and scheduler. And basically the default password is Algo, and you'll see we present you with a status page. And you know, for someone that's logging into a device remotely, you get a quick snapshot of what's going on. It tells you basically that, you know, it is SIP registered, and you can see that it shows that it's successfully registered. It shows the MAC address of the device, the IP address, the subnet mask. You know, it tells you what multicast mode it's in. So it's, you know, when I took the snapshot, it was a master. It's a master, and it was actually transmitting. So I had it doing a transmission at that time. So this control panel will actually update in real time as well, and we'll do some demonstrations of this at the end of the presentation. But you know, for somebody that's working from home, for instance, and somebody from a site called and we're having issues with their, you know, with their paging or whatever, or their emergency notifications, because those multiple registrations that are showing up here, you know, could trigger events. So I would be able to, as an administrator, be able to log into that device and start doing some initial troubleshooting with that view. This is the Algo 8300 controller. So this is a device that we basically have launched this year, and it's used for PoE SIP endpoint management. And it basically is a great device that gets installed in the customer's network, and it goes out and it'll, you know, pull the network, and it'll bring all those unmanaged devices that are out there into a single pane view. Then you can determine what are devices in the environment are essential to you. For instance, the 8301, if it's the multicast master, you may want to monitor that device, and in the event of it going out of service, have it send a notification. So that's what this device does, is it allows you to have you know, a single pane view and a monitoring capability. So we're you know, so this is a snapshot right here of a dashboard. And you know, what I was just demonstrating here is that I have some devices that are online. I have a couple of devices that are warning me that SNMP is not enabled on them, so they're not going to be able to be monitored. And then I have an error because one of my devices is not reachable. So this updates dynamically. So again, you know, you could log in, somebody, if you have somebody calling you and they're saying, hey, the paging is down in this section or whatever, you know, you can log into the 8300 that's on site if you deployed one, and you could quickly bring up a snapshot of that environment and see what's going on. So this is what the control panel looks like when it's on managed devices. So basically, you can plug in, you know, a couple of hundred devices onto a subnet, connect an Algo 8300 into that network, and we'll basically bring up this view of the devices. So what will happen is you can see that I've got IP addresses, MAC addresses, I have the product name and the product description. It actually brings up the product. You know, the 8201 is a SIP intercom. The 8036 is one of our video intercoms. So it basically brings up the devices and shows them to you. When they get into a managed state and you actually are managing them, in this case monitoring them, you'll see that it actually populates the firmware version that's running on them as well. So this device right now is for monitor and managing, and where it's configurable, and where we're going with this device, and when we do a live stuff later, or if we have time, I'm using Alpha software because we've already started to add the capability of being able to push commands out to these devices. So you'll be able to do a reboot. You'll be able to start pushing, eventually be able to push firmware updates out to these devices and so on and so forth. So that is, you know, we're getting away from people having to deploy, for instance, a TFTP server to manage a bunch of config files. It can be an either or. You can, if you want to do that type of a model where you use DHCP options and push the device to a TFTP server, you can do that. A lot of clients wanted to be able to manage their environment. So we're going to be allowing people to have these on site. There'll be a hierarchy as well. So for instance, I'm doing work with a large airport right now when they're finished their migration, they're going to have well over 3,000 endpoints in multiple terminals. And what they want is a single pane view of being able to log into a single entity and then basically see their terminals, which they'll be able to expand on their terminals, expand on their zones that they've got for their devices, and then be able to interact and push out changes. So that's where this product is going. So it's evolving to that. But in today, as it is now, it is capable of monitoring and managing and sending out alerts. So from a notification perspective, when you decide that you have devices that are critical to you and you want to monitor them, we can send out an email alert. So a device that's being monitored, and if it were to get disconnected and taken out of service, it can send out an email notification to someone. It also is capable of making, we're able to do audible alerts too, and then basically we can make a SIP call and play a WAV file over that call, or we can actually just play a tone over the speakers. So for instance, if a device was disconnected in a critical area, we could then do a broadcast over speakers in the IT department saying that this device was disconnected or went out of service. So I'm going to take you through some of the some live interactions with these devices so you can get an idea of how easy they are to manipulate and manage. I just wanted to touch on some product updates because we do have the product portfolio is evolving all the time. So this is a new device. This is we were building an Algo 8028 G1 device that needed mains power, and the reason being was we allow for the extension of a two-wire connection to a SIP intercom station outside of the perimeter of your building. So we have the mains power so that you could basically accommodate surge suppression for the device that's external to the building. We had a lot of people that wanted just a PoE device because they weren't extending beyond the confines of the building. So what we've done is we've built this Algo 8028 G2. It's got an upgraded processor and additional functionality embedded in it, like TLS and SRTP, which we did not have in the Gen 1, so for secure encrypted communications. But this device is a PoE device, so the controller connects to your network, and then we allow you to have a two-wire connection up to 1,000 feet away. If you do go beyond the perimeter of your building, you can see that we can put an external power supply on this. We also have a barrel connector for grounding. If you did not want to use any power source whatsoever, you can actually ground the device so that you can extend beyond the confines of the building. So this 8028 G2, I believe, just started shipping last month. So that's has PoE device, has normally open, normally closed capabilities for door control. The door station can be up to 1,000 feet away. So great for retrofitting environments where you would have existing digital technology where you're migrating to IP, or if you had an analog device out of the gate and you couldn't necessarily get network connectivity out there, this is a great device for being able to retrofit that because the controller stays within your network realm, but the door station can go outside of that. So strobe lights. Algo's been manufacturing strobe lights for quite some time. We had the 8128 was a white LED strobe light, and we had multiple lens covers that you could order. And today you can still order that device. We're still going to continue to manufacture it. We've upgraded the processor on it, so it too supports TLS and SRTP. But what we have done is we've come out with the 8138 SIP multicolor strobe light. So you've got the red, green, blue, and amber LEDs that are embedded in the device. So basically, you can trigger different events with SIP ring events, multicast events, and then we can control the flash patterns and the color patterns. So an emergency event could be a red flash, a shelter in place, or a weather warning could be amber. All clear is green. You could use blue for different code calls, whatever you want. So basically very configurable, and can be used in many different use case scenarios. Even way of finding is one that I was just recently on with a customer where they're like, hey, I've got a big facility, and if I go into a situation, I may want to have people go towards the green lights from an evacuation perspective and not go towards the red lights. So that's something that can be built into their mass notification system, and then when they can actually program that and trigger that so that, we can do different scenarios like that. This is quite interesting. For those of you that are familiar with the portfolio, I mean, you'll recognize these two speakers. So the 8186 is that horn speaker up above as it is today. And what it is going to happen is we're going to build a PoE plus version of it. So today, all of our endpoints are PoE endpoints, except for one speaker that we make for education space with a clock. It's a PoE plus device. But we are going to build a PoE plus version of our 8186 horn speaker. It's going to become the 8196. And what we're going to do is, as a standalone entity, it'll be a 16-watt speaker, but we're going to allow you to have a second speaker called the 1196, which will just be, it's not going to be a PoE device. It's going to be basically a slave off the PoE plus device. So what does this bring you? It'll then give you two 8-watt horn speakers. It just, in many, many applications with horns, you'll see that they go back to back in a lot of logistics, warehousing, manufacturing. There's a lot of clustering and back to back of horns. So what this does is it allows you to put a pair of horns in with a single PoE drop instead of two. So it saves you on network cabling, it saves you on network ports, and it extends coverage and it reduces cost because, of course, the 1196 is going to be a significantly cost-reduced speaker. We're doing the same thing with so for those of you that are familiar with our Algo 8188 ceiling speaker, which is the one down at the bottom, it's going to be the PoE plus version will be known as the 8198. And what we're going to allow, again, is it'll be one entity, instead of being an 8-watt, will be a 16-watt, but we're going to allow you to have up to 3 supervised speakers that will be daisy-chained off of that PoE plus. So again, significantly cost reduced when you look at the overall solution. The 8198, the PoE plus host, is going to be a little more expensive from an MSRP perspective, but I can tell you that the satellite speakers are going to be $125 MSRP, so they're going to be quite cost reduced. And they're going to come, this whole solution comes with a quick connect cable. So in each box with the satellite speaker, there'll be a 45-foot quick connect. So picture a hallway in the school. You're going to run a single PoE plus drop to that, the host speaker. And then you can basically, in a 9-foot ceiling, you can definitely have 40-foot spacing. So you can literally cover a 160-foot hallway with this arrangement of speakers with a single drop. So again, it's going to significant cost savings. It's going to also, just speed up the whole installation process as well, because we're not doing kind of like a terminal block arrangement where you've got to splice your own wire and so on and so forth. It's going to come with quick connect cables, so it'll just attach very quickly, and then you log into the device and tell it what's connected to it, like how many and so on and so forth, and then they'll zone. The master controls everything and supervises those new satellites. The 8199, which is the 8189, that's that square one up in the corner. It is basically a different form factor of the ceiling speaker that's made to surface mount. It again is going to support. It is going to support the expansion of having 3 speakers, and it is going to have a new plastic enclosure, which will be rugged like our typical plastic. But today it's a heavy metal enclosure. So we're just we're changing the enclosure to plastic, and again we're going to allow you to have up to 3 satellites off of that one as well. So basically, for those of you that are not familiar with me, my name is Scott Farrell. I'm the strategic accounts representative for the U.S. and Canada. Algo is a Canadian-based company with a global footprint. We have 70 employees. We're based in Vancouver, and we've shipped over 4 million devices. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through. So that's kind of an overview, and then what I'll do is I'll just take you through and give you a live view of some of the devices that we were talking about. In the meantime, if there's any questions that have come up, Brian, maybe I'll just get us set up here. I'm going to escape out
Absolutely.
the PowerPoint. And if Go ahead.
Was a question regarding the 8300 and that software being housed in the cloud.
Yeah, so if you wanted to, so I've had this request, and we can take this offline, but if you wanted to put this into like a VMware slice and house this in a data center, yes, you could do that, and because it's basically a Linux operating system kernel. The biggest thing is, if you're going to put it in a data center and we're traversing the network, what we do need to just explore is being able to hit the endpoints and discover the endpoints. You're not going to be able to manage based on the way we do the searching of our devices over like a WAN to a different subnet. Like, so if your data center is hitting subnets locally, and there's, yes, we will be able to do it, but we'll have to look at the whole engineering. This just recently came up, this question about, hey, do I have to buy your device? No, you don't, but there is implications from a routing perspective. So I haven't explored that fully yet with our networking team, but definitely it is something we can do. So if somebody wants to follow up with me on that, by all means, we can have that discussion.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you for addressing that, Scott.
Is there any other questions at this time?
No, I don't see anything at this time. I would like to remind everyone else, please fire away. We'll definitely address each and every one.
So, Brian, you're able to see my web browser screen?
Yes, you are good to go. You are good to go.
Okay, so what I've done is I had this 192.168.2.213 is bookmarked in my browser. You can see here is the Algo 8300 controller. So what I've done is I've basically bookmarked that, and when I bring it up, there's my status page. I haven't SIP registered this device or anything like that, but it's telling me some information about the device when I get to it. So when I decide that I'm going to log into this device and I go to the dashboard, here's where I'm going to come in, and it brings me to my managed devices that I have online right now. And you can see the different firmware versions, as I mentioned. If I go to the unmanaged tab, what it's going to do is bring up all of the unmanaged devices. So I'm actually working from home right now. I normally work from home anyway, but all these devices are set up in my home lab. So I've got, basically these devices enabled to go and get a DHCP address. And they're, it's as simple as that. I mean, I plugged the device in, it got its IP address. I basically, once I determined the IP address of the device, then I was able to go to that address and then bring up all my other devices, and it went and found them on the network for me, as simple as that. What's a nice thing about Algo product portfolio is, I just said I had to figure out what the address was of the device. So what's nice about our products, and I'll just push this, you'll hear it probably.
IP address is 192.168.2.191. IP address is.
So what all of our devices, so that if you have a technician that's out on site, or you're a customer, an end customer, and there's an Algo device, and you're like, I don't know, what the IP address is of that. There's a way of triggering the IP address being played to you. So that was an 8180 speaker, and you can see here 192.168.2.191. So it's an 8180 G2, and on that speaker it says IP address or reset, and I pushed that, and it gave me that address. So the 8300, when I plug that in, you'll notice that on a lot of our adapter devices, there's an auxiliary output port. So I could literally, what I did there is I just plugged my headset in from my iPhone. I pressed the reset switch, and it actually told me that my controller address was the 213 address, right? So that's a nice feature set on all our devices. There's a way of getting the IP address on all of them, except for the strobe light, because it cannot speak. So the strobe light, you can see the strobe light here, 8138 SIP strobe light. I had to get that by, just plugging it in, and the device went out and found it for me. As I mentioned, in the screenshots, they don't show these tabs over here. So what we're doing is we're eventually going to have more tabs added, but like today, you'll notice what I'll point out too is this firmware that I'm bringing up today is 3.3. It's Alpha 7. So this is like software not available right now, but I did want to show, where we're going, right? So today it's a monitor and manage single pane view as I'm doing, but eventually you're going to be able to go in and do, reboot, enable SNMP, enable RESTful APIs, and so on and so forth. So we support RESTful APIs on our devices as well. But eventually you're going to be able to go in here and change the volume. You'll be able to push firmware updates and all that kind of stuff. There'll be a drop-down menus to send commands out to the devices. And then, of course, you'll be able to select devices, push, multiple changes to multiple devices. But today, what I'll do is, let me just log into a device here. So I'm going to log into, I'll log into I'll log into this video phone. So this is the 8039 video phone. You can see that it's, the same idea, right? I'm logging into a different device, but I have this page that's coming up for me, and it doesn't matter where I am on the network. I'm going to be able to log in, and I'm going to be able to, it'll come up, and it'll give me some status and information, right? So it's telling me, that it's registered. It's trying to connect to some door connections here. I don't have that plugged in right now on this 1010 network, so that's why it's trying to connect to them. But it's also, gives me the IP address. It tells me that, I don't have secure encrypted communications enabled. But yeah, there's useful information here for me. So basically, as easy as it is with our devices, they're all going to be a similar look and feel. Like, I'm going to bring up the controller again. What I'll do now is, that was a video door phone that I was in. Why don't I just go and hit now a speaker? So as you'll see, you're going to get the same page coming up with the information on it. And if I log in to the device, default password of Algo, you're going to see it's a tabular experience. So once you become familiar with our products, and for IT administrators, they love our stuff because it's really easy to get our stuff registered. I'm going to go back over to the door phone, and I'll just show you like this. When I go back to the status page, it tells me that it's successful and it's registered as extension 8039. Well, that was this easy to do. All I did was, so what I've got is, I'm just running a freeware SIP server on a laptop here in my lab. What I did is I proxied to my SIP proxy server. I put in my SIP extension and my authorization password, and I was done. And then what I've done is I said, okay, well, if somebody goes up to that 8039, I want them to dial the extension 555. If somebody goes and pushes that device, right? So why don't I do that? I'll do that right now. So if I had an H.264 device, I would basically be able to, have the device call me and play video. What I'll do is I'll push this right now. You can see that I've got an incoming call, but I don't have video because a lot of people don't. So I can answer that call, and then basically I can bring up a keypad and I can push 6, and now I've just released the door. But before I release that door, had I wanted to see who was there, over here I've got this bookmarked, and then I could have brought up the video feed. So now I'm bringing up the video feed from that camera on that door phone. So that's just shooting out the window of my office here. And, I could have seen who was there. So it's as simple as that to program a lot of these things. It's just click and go. So what I'll do is I'm just going to go back here. I'll hang up this call, and I'll just minimize this guy. And I'm going to close this. So I'm back to the 8300. So as simple as that is, I was telling you about the whole being able to monitor things and basically see what's going on. So I can do, email, I can do audio. So right now, what I'm saying is, if I have a device that's being monitored and and somebody disconnects it, I want it to play a tone. So it's going to play the tone and that's another thing. Like, we have audio memory. I think I mentioned all our devices. So I created a WAV file called 83 lost connection. I've uploaded it to the device. I've put the volume low so it doesn't, get too loud. And I say play it once and play it to zone 1. So basically, if I go back now to the controller dashboard, and I'll go to my manage devices, what I could do is, the other thing is that I'll mention is, so I'm going to unplug this. I'm going to unplug a device, so hopefully this is going to work out. But under basic settings, you can see that I said, okay, my monitoring interval is 3 seconds. I can change that, but right now, for the purposes of this demo, what I've done is I've changed it to 3 seconds. So now you can see that, all of a sudden this device is gone into a warning state, and the system. So there's a heartbeat going on right now.
The Algo 8500 controller has lost contact with an Algo device.
There you go. So basically, what's happened now is I've done a broadcast. It's basically telling me that it lost. I can configure how many times that tone would play, right? I can say play until canceled, and then you can see here where I could have gone in and deactivated that. It shows right here that I could go in and deactivate the alarm. So again, configurable. It'll send an email, and now it's telling me that the SIF alerter is unreachable, and that's because somebody disconnected it from the network. And that does happen. You'll notice in some organizations, where people get annoyed with paging, they'll actually disconnect them, cut wires, and so on and so forth. But with this type of a solution now, you can actually monitor and manage what's going on your network. So now what should happen is I just connected the device back into and it's going through a boot sequence right now. So let's let it do its thing. It's polling, but of course it has to boot, so it's not going to come up immediately. Brian, is there any questions in the
No, there is no additional questions that I see at this time.
Okay.
There was one earlier that I was looking back. It was placed into a different area. It was regarding, can you use Algo devices without a PBX?
Certainly. Yes, you can.
I guess that would be referring to a speaker. Yeah, if you can explain that, Scott, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, and I just want to show that that there was no action required, right? Now I'm back online. You can see here that the 8180 G2,
Sure.
When I connected it back to the network, it went back online. So getting to your point about speakers being used without a SIP PBX, yes, they can be, and there's multiple ways that we can do that. So one way is by pushing a button, for instance, right? So I could have a button or connected to the relay input of a speaker, program that as a master, and then it'll basically trigger an event. So it's going to basically do the memory that would be stored on that could get broadcast to a bunch of speakers.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you another example where in a plant where they want to signal the break times, or in a store where the store is going to be closing and they want to do whisper paging. The store will be closing in 30 minutes. Please go to the front. Hospitals, visiting hours are over. You could literally put an Algo 8301 paging device into their network, use the NTP capabilities we have to sync with a time server, upload your customized WAV files, and just based on time, we're going to trigger those events and we'll broadcast those out over speakers. And then the other way to do it is if you have an RTP-capable phone set. So if you have, for instance, Yealink or Polycom, for instance. So Poly, they were the first ones that actually they were one of the first ones to be into the mass deployment of IP sets in hosted environments. So they had a feature on their phones called Polycom Group Page. And what that facilitates is they could actually program a page key on their sets and do a multicast out onto the network to all of their phone sets. Well, we have that capability embedded within our endpoint. So we support Polycom Group Page. So what I could do is I could bring up I can basically bring up one of my speakers. Why don't I do that for you right now and show you? So what can happen then, so I'm going to log into a speaker here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into multicast, right? So that's one of the ways that we communicate. And I'm going to basically say I'm going to be a slave device, but I'm going to participate as a Polycom group page device, and then I can become a member of any of those channels. So what happens now is when I press the page key on the Polycom phones and I broadcast to the phones that are subscribed to channel 1, this speaker, you can see, is in group 1. So it will also play that page. No SIP registration required whatsoever. And in addition to Polycom, all of the other set manufacturers now, like Audio Codes and Yealink, even Cisco. I have a Cisco, I think it's a 7800 series phone over there. It does RTP multicast, and I can build out a paging group without any registration whatsoever. And then what is nice is I can tie legacy infrastructure. So if you have because I support multicast, if you have a 70-volt system, on-prem, and you want to preserve that, I can tie that into the balanced isolated output of my adapter, and then I can basically have that as part of your page group. So when you do a page, you can page sets, you can page other IP speakers like Algo speakers and your legacy infrastructure without any SIP registrations whatsoever. So that I think covers it to the best of my ability right there. Is there any other questions, Brian?
No, that's all there is, and I think you covered that really accurately, though. So thank you.
One other thing I'll show, I mean, if people are interested, I told you about our new 8138, which is really cool. So for those of you that are familiar with the 8128, this one, what you're going to be able to do is go into your strobe, and you're going to be able to change and have multiple flash patterns and different brightnesses, different colors and color combinations, right? And then you'll be able to do start and stop and test everything as well. And then what we can do is then we can go in and based on multicast, base and extended zones. If I go to advanced multicast, I just have to enable it here. Of course. Basic, sorry. Okay, I don't see where that spot is here. Sorry about this, people. But basically, what I was trying to show, and I'm just not getting it to pop up. Oh, here we are. I apologize. I had to save this. I didn't save that. That's why. So now if I go back to my advanced settings, advanced multicast, you can see that I can basically use different flash patterns. So when I talk about multicast, these are all the different zones. So I said, like we do up to 50 different multicast zones. So what we're broadcasting is on this port, right? 224 is the IP address and then a port number. What I can do is now I can go in and grab all these different strobe patterns. So I can associate different strobe patterns with different multicast broadcasts. That's what I was wanting to depict to you. So you can get into some really cool workflows using multicast and strobe patterns, and then we can trigger these with SIP calls. We can get into some really interesting stuff. So I'll turn it back to you, Brian. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There was actually one more question that came in. It said, I noticed a slide earlier that included other software integrations. What does Algo integrate with?
So, so from an integration, now I wouldn't say we integrate, I'd say we respond to, right? So if you have a mass notification solution, Synapse, Mitel Revolution, Informacast, single wire Informacast, I mean, we can integrate into those solutions. But I mean, when you say integrate, it basically, you know, we can respond to them, right? So we become a slave to them, and then they can manipulate us with those software iterations. And I'm sorry, what was the question again?
You basically just answered it. It was just regarding software integrations and what you do integrate with. I think you just nailed it there. And of course, you know, I can say that Algo has been #1 choice for free PBX users, regular vanilla asterisks. I've even seen Algo go on Grand Stream systems, of course 3CX as well. So really across the SIP market, Algo is fastly becoming the most prevalent go-to company for IP paging. So reach out to myself or Scott or both. We would love to learn about your projects and how Algo can be a useful tool in your arsenal for your projects. So I'll be reaching out, after this as well, sending out an email or giving you a buzz to schedule up a one-on-one. But if no one has any other questions, again, Scott, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, and each and every one of you. I hope everyone's safe, and really appreciate taking the time out of your days to join us and learn more about Algo Solutions. Well, Scott, do you have anything
Thanks,
else?
Brian. Yeah. No, that's all. I appreciate you setting this up, and I hope that this was informative, and I hope it resonates with the fact that everything we were doing today could have been done remotely, basically. So for managing an infrastructure, being stuck at home, you're able to access your corporate network. You would have been able to manipulate the devices as I was today.
Absolutely. Awesome. And Scott, thank you so much. And everyone stay safe. Thank you so much.